Good evening, all you Sheehanites. Tonight is a very special episode of Sheehan is Dead Comics. Tonight, I'll be interviewing the one, the only Philip Kennedy Johnson. We're going to talk primarily about his World Saga in the pages of Action Comics and Superman. He also touches on his run on Green Lantern and on the Hulk. Philip is a very deep thinker, very emotional guy, excellent, just a fantastic writer, right up there with my favorites. Just a beautiful human being. And also, I want to say thank you to our editor, Darth Pillow. And we're going to get on with the show. But first, I'd also like to ask for anyone just tuning in, or if you do follow us but haven't subscribed, please give us a like and a subscribe. We've got some things cooking. Eventually, we're going to get Jeff Johns on. We're going to get Jimmy Palmiotti, Danny Earls. We're going to get Rags Morales on as well. So again, if you like this interview, you like what we're doing, please go to our channel, Sheehan is Dead Comics. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and again, a like on this video. So, on with the show. You were really driven about Superman.
Yeah.
As opposed to being intimidated. You were like, I know exactly what I'm going to give him.
Yeah. I was like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And I couldn't, or not. I mean, as far as the plot, I didn't know what I was going to do as far as plot yet. I just knew who my Superman would be. As far as what the story was going to be, that was, I knew that I wanted to really put the super back in Superman and show some big epic spacefaring stuff, because we had seen so much of the Daily Planet most recently. It seemed like there had been Brian Bendis had done this, it had really gone to great lengths to humanize Superman and show a lot of the supporting cast and their relationships and everything. And that was all beautifully done. But I wanted to see Superman in this gigantic, sprawling space epic, to show what he means to humanity, what he means to the universe, to the multiverse. Fortunately, actually, they meaning DC at large, kind of wanted to make a lot more out of Jonathan Kent and to expand on that character. And it made sense to send Superman off world for a little bit while Jonathan Kent kind of spread his wings. So I just kind of looked at the context of where Superman had been recently, what they had done. I saw how they had made so much out of the supporting cast, how Mongol, they had recently killed off Mongol. His son had kind of stepped into his shoes, and just all the different things that I thought had been done well and done recently, and just kind of decided where would be the next logical step. And
yeah, because you could have gone anywhere, but you were like, you know what, let me do Mongol, but Mongol, the son. And I was like, that was an interesting choice, because Mongol, to me, when I think of him, the biggest threat that I remember him being was, 30 years ago in The Return of Superman, when Coast City was leveled in, what was it,
right.
Green 46? That's when he was big time to me. But since then, he's kind of just been like a punching bag.
Yeah, when even then there was the thing where he was kissing the ring of Cyborg Superman, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like he was kind of taken down a rung. And yeah, it just sometimes I look at something in comics canon and it just feels a little underserved, or one-dimensional. And Mongol has been like that, and Warworld has been like that as well as a setting. Warworld is something that I always kind of wanted to be more interesting. I didn't want it just another Death Star ripoff.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be a place with real culture and real, people that live there, and what would that life be like? And plus, I had just done The Last God, this big, which is now called the Felspire Chronicles, where world building was the whole thing, where you're just designing religions and languages and architecture and centuries of history and how these different religions clash. And it was all so fun and interesting and rewarding. And I thought, what if we did that in space in DC continuity? So yeah, it just felt like the place to go. I wanted to take this tiny little corner of DC lore and make it big and awesome and impressive and old, but also make it feel new. And it just felt like the right move. Plus, I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, there was this statement that it was about human trafficking and
Yes.
about
I was going to ask you that too, because of the kids. Like that's what it made
yeah,
me think of. With what was it, Ozul and Othra, or
um, Osul and Otho, yeah,
you know,
Osul Ra and Otho Ra, who are now um, Red Sun and Star Child. Yeah, I something at the time everyone was clamoring for John to be aged back down.
right? I remember. Yeah,
It just would have been such a mistake. I know there's still people out there here and there that still want it
like
back.
Bendis, Bendis. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, to just wave a wand and just kind of undo that would have been a real disservice, in my opinion, to the characters, but also to the fans, to the books. And I don't know. It just felt like a big mistake. So I really wanted to make sure everything was going forward. And Jonathan was becoming his own character with his own things to say. So underneath all that, the thing that people really missed was seeing Lois and Clark as parents to a young kid.
Mhm.
And honestly, we hadn't really seen yet. Like when Jonathan came back home, the trauma that would have brought for those lost years, those formative years. I mean, because I mean, at the time, John was roughly the age that my son is now when he left. And when he comes home, he's like almost an adult. I would be so crushed, man. If I lost those years of my own son, we never really saw that trauma take place in the pages of the book. And I was like, we got to see that. We got to see how this is affecting all of them. So introducing the twins on Warworld was a way to make a statement that I wanted to make about human trafficking and later about refugees, but also to give fans what they want, to see Clark and Lois as the parents to young children again, and to
Wow,
see.
that's ingenious, man.
Well, thanks. I mean, it felt important. I wanted to see. He finds these little kids who hate him because they've been brainwashed their whole lives. To them, Mongol is Superman,
Right?
and
Yeah.
they come home and like they well, so Superman goes there to save them, and they don't want his help. None of them do. They're proud of their chains. They don't want to lose them. Their chain is all they have. It's like their status symbol. They don't want to lose it.
That
And
was I got to tell you real quick that the level. I mean, having spoken to you one and a half times now, almost two at the end here, you're a very deep thinker, and only a deep thinker could come up with that. It's because it's so ingenious, and I picked up on it right away, the inversion of like what's bad is good and what's good is bad. And I was like, wow, this is so ingenious. Like, what was there something that inspired you to do that, or did it just come to you? Were you thinking of something specific? Because that was so smart, man. That was so, so clever.
well, thanks.
Thank you.
Honestly, it was inspired by some real life stuff. I have done a lot of. I mean, recently I've kind of fallen out of it, but I've done a lot of anti-human trafficking work,
Mhm.
and that is just impossibly difficult work to do. I mean, it just crushes your soul, man. There's so many people who do that every day, and my hat's off to them for the just how difficult it is. Because I mean, it's if you're expecting people to be grateful, to want your help, to be like just, somewhere praying for you to come along, that's not how it is at all. Like they don't want your help. To them, by the time you find out that they exist, they've been so beaten down. They've lost everything they ever had. Their family's gone. Anything they owned, like any kind of tangible shit that they ever owned, is gone. Their identity is gone. There's no driver's license, birth certificate, credit history, uh, you know, grades of any kind. There's like their entire history is erased. Their family is gone. Their friends are gone. All they have is their pimp, their slaver, really. And that's that relationship with them. Even any kind of money that they make on the street goes right to the slaver. And that relationship is all they have left. And to them, they don't even have a pimp. They have a boyfriend. Like they just need to save up enough money and then they can go and have the life that they want. It's all this big fantasy. And if you try to take that relationship, if you come along, some stranger, and
Mhm.
threaten that relationship with their pimp, they will kill you to defend it.
Sure.
You know, and I honestly, when I first started telling the story about the Warworld saga, I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. I didn't realize that's the story I was telling. But when I started thinking about the chains and everything, at some point I kind of took a step out of it and looked at it and realized that this is a story that I'd seen with my own eyes, where that chain is real, man. These people, I mean, they're suffering that they put themselves through, that they have been put through, is all they have, and they will kill you to defend it. So that's what the chain is really. Um, yeah. So so somehow that those experiences of mine kind of blended with the political landscape that we're in right now, with the danger of political strongman, with authoritarianism, with um, cults of personality, and you know, this whole ecosystem of information that's all lies. And these things all kind of come together and told a story that I thought was very important, and that I personally wanted to see Superman deal with. I want to see how Superman saves people who don't want his help. You know, so that's what the War World Saga is. It's Superman saving people that don't want to be saved.
You you crushed it, man. You crushed it.
Oh, thank you, man.
You really did, because I picked up on that with the human trafficking. And I've seen as things, there is a lot of misinformation and lies, but I've also seen things, when people crossing the border, there's children that they buy or some sort of thing where the child helps them get in, but the child has no relation to them, DNA or otherwise. And so it's like how much trafficking is coming into the country right now through the open border. And sincerely, Phil, like I actually did think of you when I read about that. And it really touched me because it really is a tragic thing. I don't know it. I didn't know it like you know it. And what you're saying and how you piece it together makes absolute sense with the chains and whatnot. Totally. But it really is. It's a sad, I mean, I've tried not to think about it since then, but it pops up in my mind every now and then. And it's incredibly sad, just in a general sense, as opposed to someone who's had you've had yourself in that. So I applaud you.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a story I'm very proud of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm really touched by that. Um, and then as far as the whole, what was it, that they were trying to uncover with at the end where to get Superman's power back and it turned into the blade and then he
Yeah.
saved the boy who Mongol killed. I was like, oh my goodness, Mongol killed him. And then he put the blade on him and healed him. And I was like, oh, okay. As Superman got his power back. What was the name of it again? I'm sorry. I just read it. I forgot.
The Spark of Ulgrin.
Yes, yes, yes. It was
Yeah.
like, yeah, to where he had to, he went to push the hologram out of the way. And she's like, you would save someone who's not. He's like, well, you're alive to me. And then he's granted the power as worthy. I thought that was really neat too.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was. Yeah, Mongol wanted the power for himself, of course, and he expected that Superman would take it into himself and make himself
Right.
like the avatar of this old god and just become even more powerful than he ever has been. But Superman, who has still not received his own power yet,
Yeah.
like in Mongol's eyes, squanders it. He like
Mhm.
spends it on this slave who's nobody.
Mhm.
And I wanted to show Mongol, who just cannot comprehend such a decision. Like, why would you throw that away?
Right.
Superman's like, you just don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
let's just do this. But so yeah, I wanted to see Superman take. The only reason that Superman has those powers, the only reason that Superman should have the power, is to illustrate how incorruptible he is.
Yes.
If we're just watching Superman kick somebody's ass, there's the shelves of every comic shop are filled with characters who can do that. The difference is that he only has like they should only be on the page. The power should only be on the page to show us that he cannot be corrupted, that he has ultimate power, but also ultimate compassion and humility. And that was a moment that kind of illustrated that, where he takes this thing that would give him the power, finally give him his power back, and actually make this easy for him again. But instead, he saves a slave kid.
Yeah. And I feel like you tap into that very well. It's not just like with Bendis's, his was more like to me, it was like Christopher Reeve embedded in a mystery, whereas yours was more like just Superman's heart being on full display when you took him and put him in that situation. And I thought it was fantastic.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to see those moments. Like there was a moment when he comes back to Earth when he saves the car full of the family in the car that falls. He does this big visual spectacle with like kind of crushing the tank and flying down and grabbing the car and bringing it up. And then he kind of opens the back seat and just kind of, tugs in the seatbelt, make sure that the kids are okay, and make sure, talks to them and make them feel cool. And he says something like, the kid offers him his Flash toy. It's like he's got a little Flash stuffed animal. And he's like, that's okay, son. You can keep him. Like he'd really miss you, but tell you what you can do for me, keep wearing your seatbelt just like you did today. That seatbelt did more to save than anything I did.
Yeah.
And makes the kids feel like they saved themselves. It makes them feel great, like they did this awesome thing. And then they feel like heroes. And as he flies off and they're all waving like, yeah, we're awesome like you are. I don't know. Those little personal touches is what makes him different. And that's inspired by Reeve too. I love I know those movies are not like perfect all the way through, but man, his depiction of Superman is just it for me. And the way that his smile has no ego in it, that he's just there as a friend to help us when like the helicopter scene in the first movie. He's like, I've got you.
You got me. Who's got you?
Yeah. He kind of gives you the smile. It's all gonna be okay. It's not a smile with any kind of ego or like self-love. It's just like, that's kind of funny. You're gonna be okay. Everything's fine.
He's like, good night,
Yeah.
He could have just flown away,
Right. Gives a little PSA, like, certainly hope this hasn't put you off flying.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
I wanted to capture that little touch of kindness. Like it's still got to be like this personal connection where he's always, while inspiring us to be like him, he's trying to be like us.
Wow.
I
wow, that's interesting. I never thought of it exactly like that. Trying to be like us. I mean, it's kind of that's an interesting thought.
He sees the best in us. He's trying to be like that. Like there was actually the very first. You asked if I felt the weight of it when I was doing this, and I really wanted my first story to be, if I got hit by a truck, this whole thing that I could kind of hang my hat on, like this is what he did that mattered. This the Future State Superman Worlds of War issue is a 2-issue story as part of the Future State event. And
I didn't read it, so go ahead.
I'm very proud of it.
Oh, wait a minute. Is that the one that you told me the last time where they went to that alternate universe? Was that it, or is that something else?
No.
Okay.
No,
I'm sorry.
Future State was it was like a 2-month thing that DC did, and that was my first shot at Superman. That came out right before my Action 1029 and Superman 29 issues.
Okay.
The Phil Hester Golden Age thing. Right before that, there was the Future State issues, and I wrote Superman Worlds of War 1 and 2 and Superman Future State House of L #1. And that's like a double-sized thing about his descendants 1,000 years in the future.
Okay.
Those kind of sum up the direction that my run was going to go. They're collected in the War World Saga trade that came out too. The big
thick compendium.
Yeah, that those are, I think, at the very end.
Okay.
But it's a 2-issue thing. It takes place like 10 years in the future or something. Where I think when they told me, let me think, when they told me it was about to come out, excuse me, when they told me to do the thing, I think they told me it was going to be 10 years in the future. And then later, when they actually printed it, they put like 5 years in the future. I think they changed the timeline somehow, either from 5 to 10 or 10 to 5. Anyway, it's meant to be after Superman has revealed his secret identity and he's left Earth for War World and has never returned. And now Smallville has become like this kitschy kind of like a Roswell kind of town where everything is all
yeah.
It's like makes sense. Krypton knickknacks and stuff. And there's this. So in the first of the 2 issues is we're seeing these people who kind of gather at what they call Rocket Field now, where they now believe that Superman's rocket came to Earth as a baby. Mm-hmm. There's like this big Superman monument now, and they go there, and the people that Superman saved during his life here gather to kind of talk about how they were saved, and they just kind of honor Superman and talk about where they think he is now. Nobody knows where he is, but they all kind of have these thoughts about where he might have gone. And they tell it starts out with memories of how they saved him, how he saved them. And then it becomes these kind of folk tales about where they think he is now. And they get more and more outlandish. And we see these different adventures that they imagine him having, and how he's becoming bigger than life, how he's a shape-shifting alien. And he's done this 1,000 times in 1,000 different worlds, or he's become the righteous wind. We just don't see him anymore. He just like flies through and just saves us every day. We don't even know. Or he was always a farmer. You know, we made him a fighter. He was always he wanted to be a farmer. And so now he's out there like seeding the universe. And you know, at the end of his life, he'll fly into a sun and his descendants will fly out of it and save the universe and blah, blah, blah. They're telling all these amazing stories. And then we see where he actually is, and he's being dragged through the mud as a slave on Warworld, fighting to save other slaves.
Wow.
And we read a Clark Kent op-ed as we see him fighting. We read a Clark Kent article that he wrote while he was here about a homeless man who died, and a person that many of us would walk right by on the street, not give a second thought to somebody who we regard as a loser.
Sure.
But Superman held him in the highest regard, and because he knew him, he knew the life that he led, and just the completely moral, ethical life that he led, and just really respected the way he lived his life, and holds him on the pedestal like this is someone that we should all aspire to be. So yeah, that was kind of my statement on Superman.
That's an awesome idea, man. That's a great idea. That makes me want to get those. That's an awesome idea. I
Well,
really
thank
like
you.
that.
I hope you read it. Mikhail
I
Haneem
will.
did art too, and he
Yeah,
crushed it.
you can't go wrong with him. Yeah.
Yeah, it was unbelievable artwork.
Yeah.
That's where we start to see the chain thing. Like he's because Superman's got like swords and axes and stuff, and they kind of Mongol says something like, "You didn't draw blood from a single fighter" or something like that. And like I wasn't aiming for them, and then we see that all their chains are broken.
Ah,
And then the people who are, you know, yelling for him to be killed in the stands of the arena, eventually they come to realize, and they start to hold up broken chains as like a symbol of what he's doing.
yeah. Just like when they call him unblooded sword. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. I love you have like even in simple words, you have a poetry and a deepness, a depth in your Superman and when you speak that I really appreciate and that I connect with. So I
Oh, thank you,
love it,
man.
man. You're aces. Like I can't tell you enough how
No.
much I enjoy your run and even speaking with you. I feel like I could talk to you for hours and they would just pass because we have 9 minutes left and I feel like we just jumped on. So I really appreciate you. I really appreciate
Oh,
everything.
you too, man.
Awesome.
It's kind of you to say.
Sincerely, Phil, really. And all right, with the 9 minutes we have left, I got to tell you, I pre-ordered your Green Lantern book
Oh,
too.
thanks.
I'm sure you're crushing that because you also have that military aspect that obviously John comes from. So I'm sure you like, you had a big connection on that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. Yeah, I like John a lot, man. Um, I grew up with Hal Jordan as my Green Lantern,
Me too.
and
Yep.
I did have some books with John in it, but I really had to kind of figure out who my John was going to be because the John that I remember from the old comics. I mean, the comics that I had that had John in them were old even when I got them. That there was like second, third hand stuff. But I remember him as an architect, and he kind of had an old, kind of a dated way of speaking,
Yeah.
and I didn't know how I was gonna. I needed to find my way into the character, and I talked to Jeffrey Thorne at length on the phone, and I'm really glad I did that because Jeffrey has a real understanding of John that I really appreciate.
Now,
So
forgive me, was I thought Neil Adams was the creator? Is Jeffrey a co-creator or the
no,
creator?
Jeffrey wrote John more recently. John,
Oh,
he was writing a John. He wrote a John Stewart series not long before I took the
okay,
book.
okay,
And he just has this deep appreciation of Jeffrey Thorne of John Stewart.
sure.
So he talked to me about his opinions on John, and he said one thing that I thought was really interesting. He said that in his opinion, John never intended to be a Green Lantern for like the rest of his life. He's going to do his time of service and then at some point give it up and go do something else.
Okay.
Whereas we usually think of superheroes as like they're going to die in the saddle. They're going to do this forever, you know? It's hard to imagine Superman or Batman just hanging it up and going back to their day job and just stopping, you know? But he thought that John would, that the way that a military man does. I shouldn't say man, military, like a service member. People do their time in the service and then they go and continue their lives and do other shit. And I thought that was a really interesting way to look at John. And it kind of made me think about people that I know that have gone into into like war zones and um and come back kind of fucked up.
Sure.
I'm not getting
My old
how.
man did. My dad had PTSD. He was in Vietnam. And only now do I realize the toll it took on myself, my mom, my sister as an adult. So
Yeah. I mean, people like those, especially, well, that's not true. I was about to say especially now. That is absolutely not true. But there one element that is complicated now in urban war zones is that the danger is 360 degrees and also up and down and all around. Like there's nowhere that you're like, there's no real place where you can
yeah, it's
not
it's
look.
not it's not like no man's land where you dug a ditch and hid and shot, you know.
Yeah, like yeah, there's so much like sometimes there's so much stealth involved, or like these things are rigged to IEDs are rigged to look like anything, and like you're just on edge constantly, you know. So people come back from that and where it's dialed to 11 around the clock all the time, and they come back and they're kind of chasing that. Like so many people come back from war and just really can't drive the speed limit anymore, and they die in motorcycle accidents, or they have these real rage issues, or like they're trying to get their adrenaline levels back to where they're used to, you know. And man, it's hard. And I wanted to see John, coming back to deal with a family crisis to help his dying mother, who is the reason he is a hero at all, like the civil rights leader mother who inspired him to be who he is. Now she's at the end of her life and he's trying to deal with that. He's trying to help her, where
Mhm.
he's a guy that's always been able to shoot at his problems. And now he can't, and he's like not doing well. I wanted to see, like, he thinks that he's done with the ring now. He's retired. There's a new, as seen in the pages of the other Green Lantern book by Jeremy Adams and Zermanico. Um, the the Lantern Corps is kind of under new management. It's like the United Planets are now running the Green Lantern Corps,
Oh, okay.
not the Guardians. And John doesn't really believe in the new direction. And his mother is dying. And so he kind of steps back and is like, I think this is my time to bow out. Like I'm gonna retire. So he hangs it up and he goes home, and he thinks he's done with the ring. But as it turns out, the universe is not done with him, and he is urgently needed, and things kind of don't go as he expects. So we have to see him dealing with this, gigantic, cosmic crisis, while he's also trying to protect his mom, who inspired him to be who he is. And it's a very, very personal story. Hopefully, the most personal story we've ever seen with John Stewart. I'd like to believe that is the most personal story we've seen from him, because I've always wanted to see more about that mother. I remember one of my old issues talked about his mom and what a big inspiration that she was for him, and I wanted to see more of that. It just makes so much sense to me, because the thing that sets John apart as a superhero, the thing that kind of makes him the consummate superhero,
Mhm.
is that he cast his mask aside when he became a superhero. Like there's this panel back in the day that Neil Adams drew of him casting his mask aside, like, I've got nothing to hide. And he throws his mask off. Like, I'm John Stewart, Green Lantern. And that's something that wasn't really happening back then. Even Superman had Clark Kent,
Yeah.
So for him to do that, I was just so impressed. Even as a kid, I was like, wow. Because you're just used to every superhero having the secret identity.
Mhm.
That made such an impression on me. And if anything, if there's any one thing that kind of defines John Stewart to me, it's that he cast his mask aside. And it also makes a lot of sense to me that it was his mom that inspired him, as somebody who was a civil rights leader, that she would have this healthy distrust of the masked vigilante.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes
That
sense.
she would teach him, like, you show your face, you do the right thing, and you show your face while you're doing it, kind of a thing. And that's what this book is about. And
Dude,
it's
that's awesome.
So
That's
we
awesome.
see we see I want to see all the elements of John Stewart. I want to see him as the son of the civil rights leader. I want to see him as the brother to the sister who's died. I want to see him as the architect, as the ex-Marine, as the Green Lantern. I just wanted a book that showed all of his elements. And I think that's what we're doing here. Alongside Montos, he was doing unbelievable work on the art.
Sure, sure.
So
Now, are you allowed to say how many more issues you're on or no?
should I? There
No.
is a set number. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say how many issues it's going to
But
be.
it's not like you're going to be gone in like 3 issues, or is it
I know.
okay?
No, it's going to be. It's like I'm writing the second arc right now,
Okay.
and it'll
Okay.
be another proper size. I can say the first arc ends at number 6, and we're doing the second arc right now.
Okay. All right, fair enough. That's fantastic then. So there's going to be some meat on the bone. That's good.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a nice size volume, and hopefully one that John fans will turn to for, I want it to be like an evergreen story that people can turn to if they like John.
I think that's fantastic, incorporating the toll, the psychological toll. That's super smart. I don't think I've even read that with Hal Jordan. It's usually just, you know, a lot of fun and bluster, and here we go. There's a universal threat. Let's blast him with the ring. So
Honestly, I'm really glad they gave, even though I grew up with Hal, I'm glad they gave Hal to Jeremy too, because Jeremy is a great voice for that character. But also I'm glad they gave John to me because I do like these really, like these combinations of like larger than life action, but also like kind of, I want to see like the things that make these people like fearful or sad too. I want to see like the things that scare them or upset them. And I want to see who they are underneath all that, and they gave me an opportunity to tell a really emotional, heavy, inspiring, but also kind of tragic story about John that I'm really excited to get out there on the show.
awesome, man. I'm looking forward to the trade. I'm really looking forward to it. So
Thank you.
yeah,
I
I
did.
knew you'd do well on it, but gosh, the way you articulated that, it's like, come on, how could you not want to pick it up? So
Thanks. It's fun. Sometimes people will ask me, like, aren't they kind of similar? Superman and John kind of similar? There are similarities. I mean, they're both very virtuous people,
yes.
but I mean, you could say that about most superheroes, arguably. I know there are some anti-heroes that are very different, but generally, that most of the people are trying to do the right thing. There's something a little more aggressive is too strong a word, but
Edgy?
something a little more fighty about John.
Yeah. Yeah.
John, there's this thing that sometimes happens in the service, like whenever two service members get into a fight, um, the rank usually is like these days the rank is like a Velcro thing that goes in the chest. Like when somebody's about to throw down, they'll take the rank and they'll throw it down.
Oh, okay. So we're on equal footing. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not going to hide behind my rank. Let's fight. And something about that gesture feels very John to me.
Most certainly.
John's just not afraid of anybody. And when he's talking, I tried to introduce a proper nemesis to him, or a couple, I guess, a couple nemesis for John in this series. One of them is the big cosmic threat. The other one is more like kind of at John's level. And when John is fighting the one that's kind of on his level, like he talks a little bit of smack, like
Yeah.
the way that people do. And that's something that Superman would not do. Superman's very humble, he's got nothing to prove. And
Yeah.
kind of John's a little more like shoved to the chest kind of a fighter. But also like has a very thinking man kind of approach to fighting. He thinks more about like tactics the way a military person would. It's all about, let's change the terrain to suit our needs. He thinks about how everything works and how everything is put together. I try to show that side of him. So they're both very virtuous, but very different too, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing all that. That's way
Yeah,
cool.
of course.
Now we're 2 minutes over. Do you just want to wrap up now, or you want to say something real quick about the Hulk? Because I pre-ordered the Hulk. I've never read a Hulk comic ever, but when I saw you were on it, I pre-ordered it.
Oh, thanks, man. We can talk about Hulk for a minute. It's
Okay, go ahead.
man, I'm so proud of that book.
Because that doesn't, I mean, at least off the bat, I'm like, oh, interesting. Philip, the Hulk. Let's see what the Hulk
It's
to me.
not one you would necessarily think of off the
Yeah,
cuff, right?
yeah, yeah.
When they asked me to do it, I had to think about it. But I mean, it's a big title, and I wanted to do it. Like I was like, man, can I make this work? Can I make this work like logistically? Because I'm so underwater, I got to figure out a way to make the time for this and really do it right.
Yeah.
I had just given up Alien, and I love Alien, man. Like I'm a huge Alien fan. I had just given it up for reasons of bandwidth.
Mhm.
And then right then they asked me if I wanted to do Hulk. I was like, oh my God, dude. Let me think about it. And Al Ewing and Joe Bennett had just done Immortal Hulk, which I thought was perfect. And Donnie Cates had done a much more brief run after that. And that was just ending or about to end. And I had to kind of think about what I wanted to do. The biggest challenge was, how do I not just copy what Al and Joe did? Because I mean, I really, really like that run. And what I want as a reader is just more of that. But I kind of I sat with it, and I realized that my way into this was going to be to kind of move away from what Al had done with the black science, like Cronenberg kind of horror take on Hulk, and move into more of like a Mignola kind of folk horror kind of thing. And that's what we're doing now. It's still very much a horror book, as Hulk was originally supposed to be. Hulk was always meant to be a monster book in the beginning. And then it crossed the streams enough with the other superhero books that he became more of like a superhero kind of character. But he was in the Avengers and started, he was still fighting monsters, but it was more of a superhero kind of book. But it started out as a Jekyll and Hyde Frankenstein kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I wanted to explore that less Cronenberg, more Mignola. And also I wanted to explore more a different kind of take on the body horror, where we see the transformations and we see what a toll that would take on the human body. I want to see how much that shit hurts. I want to see somebody where their skin is sagging and their bones are popping, and like the Hulk's teeth are pushing out human teeth, and like the skull plates are like expanding, and it's all like really gnarly. I don't want to see him just like kind of swell up green. I want to see
Right.
it like,
And that's what I'm used to. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Just,
I want to see it get kind of gross.
yeah.
Um, I just wanted to feel more like a Hellboy kind of book, or even Hellblazer in some cases. So we introduced. I just went all in, both feet on the monster take, and so now the first arc is called Age of Monsters, and it's just a book about Hulk fighting monsters all the way through. I introduce new monsters wherever I can. I want to add to the bestiary of the Marvel universe. And we're doing that through this new character called the Mother of Horrors,
Mother of
and,
horrors. Okay.
and this other creature called Eldest, that is the eldest creature that came from the Mother of Horrors. And she's the one that's kind of trying to bring the Mother of Horrors back into Earth. And so she kind of awakens this entire race of monsters around the world. And Hulk just kind of brings them to him like a lightning rod. So everywhere Hulk goes, we're kind of seeing Hulk on this walkabout across the American South. We see a lot of cool Southern Gothic imagery, and we kind of find all these folk monsters that sort of gravitate towards him, trying to bring him to Eldest. And it gives us this great setup for all these really short arcs, like 1 issue, 2 issues, 3 issues, just constant jumping on points, constant first appearances of stuff. It's just super fun, man. There is still, I can't ever tell a story without having something to say. And I do have something to say in that book about substance abuse and about the nature of abuse. There are still statements being made in the book, but it's also just this kind of a visual spectacle of like what the monsters of the Marvel universe are and Hulk's place in them.
Cool, man. Well, I must say, as regards being preachy or not, there's some comics that I've seen people complain about, whether online or on YouTube, where it seems like they stop the story to make a statement, but your statements roll within the story in a natural way that it's just part of the story. It's not like you're standing on a pedestal, even though you
Yeah,
may be
no,
when you're writing it, but it doesn't come across that way. And I must say, as a reader, it's appreciated. So,
thanks. Yeah, no, it's all, if there's something you want to say, it should be done with subtext, and not ever like in a preachy pandering way. So whenever there's a point to it, I try to kind of hide it in the texture of the story and not make it too like, you know, don't
like,
I, don't-
here's
I
Phil
don't ever
again.
want to talk down to anybody.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you certainly don't. And with that, we're at 52 minutes. And is there any last words that you want to share before we stop recording?
No, it's good to see you again, man. If anyone wants
Uh,
to see more of my stuff, check
yeah,
me out at Philip K. Johnson. I'm on Twitter and the other little Twitter, Twitter's kind of exploded and become a few different things. I'm on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Threads right now. I'm on Facebook under my full name, Instagram at Philip K. Johnson, and I have a website, Philip Kennedy Johnson. I try to keep my stuff updated there too. So yeah, look me
okay.
up.
Awesome. Now on philipkennedyjohnson.com, it's .com, yes, not
Yes.
like .net or whatever. Okay. On that, do you have like almost like a PO box email that people can send stuff to?
Yeah,
Or
there's a thing in there that people can write to. Yeah.
okay, cool, man. Awesome, awesome. Well, Phil, pleasure. I must say, I was so grateful when I saw you at Comic-Con and you remembered who Scott was. Like we talked about that on the train ride home.
Oh,
And Scott made a video, like a 4-minute video of just real quick highlights of our New York Comic-Con. And one of them was you, and you could see the look on your face when you recognized me, and then you actually stood up, which was very gentlemanly of you. I really appreciated that.
oh,
Really, really, really nice to see you, sincerely.
thank you, man.
And
Yeah, no, it's great to see you. So thanks again for reaching out and thanks for your patience getting me back on here. I've been just drowning, but
no, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for putting up with the technical issues.
oh
It's like,
no.
what's going on? So
No.
thank you. A pleasure, buddy. A genuine pleasure. I'll keep rooting for you and liking your stuff on Twitter. And if
Thanks,
there's
brother.
ever something you want to say, you have an open forum here at Sheehan is Dead Comics. And yeah, it's a pleasure to speak to you. Appreciate it. So thank you.